Welcome back, everyone, to Open Line, talking politics. We have with us Dr. Thomas Schwartz, political science professor at Vanderbilt University. And as we went to break, we were talking about, there are all kinds of interesting things going on the ballot tonight. There's one in Minnesota, a ballot initiative that would really change the police department. And of course, Minnesota, it's where George Floyd happened. Minneapolis, where George Floyd happened. What about that initiative? What are you aware of as far as that initiative goes, Dr. Schwartz?
Well, you have to remember a year ago that in the wake of the George Floyd killing, there was a substantial debate about policing practices in the country, and a number of people wanted to, or talked about this in terms of defund the police and redirecting the budgets that went to police services to other social services, particularly mental health interventions and other things along those lines to prevent police shootings, to prevent violent incidents, this sort of thing. And this was a strong, it acquired a strong push with the George Floyd case. But at the same time, of course, you had a surge then in murders and other homicides going and an upsurge in crime that took place that challenged this. So the Minnesota referendum is an interesting reflection because it was ground zero in terms of what happened in the George Floyd case as to whether the desire for reform of police can carry the ballot, even though there has been this upsurge in crime, and whether or not the reform of the police movement will really be able to be sustained. Because Congress didn't pass the George Floyd Act. President Biden wanted that passed by the first anniversary of George Floyd's death, and that did not happen. And in fact, that legislation is dead in Congress right now.
Yeah, very confusing language being used, defund the police. I've had people on this show who are like, yes, that's what we mean. We mean take money away from the police. And others are like, no, It means redirect certain funds, keep police around. And it sounds like what they're talking about in Minneapolis is to redirect some of the funding to mental health type things and that kind of things. There would still be police, but some of this money would be redirected. And so this is kind of an interesting first ballot initiative, I feel like, first major city. That's a major city, Minneapolis.
Right.
To be looking at this, and it's a very passionate debate on both sides, and that will be an interesting thing to watch tonight.
Yeah. Yes. No. I think those results could have a real telling impact about police reform in the country, and whether other cities will attempt the same thing.
All right, we only have, let's say we have 5 minutes left. I'm not calling this race, okay? You look on Twitter right now, and the Republican's doing very well. So let's say the Republican wins, or let's say maybe the Democrat pulls it out at the last second. No matter what, it looks like it's going to be close, and the Republican's doing very well. Let's say the Republican wins. What does that mean as we wake up the political landscape tomorrow morning, should that happen?
Well, whether it will certainly energize the Republicans. It will provide a game plan for other races next year. It may demoralize some Democrats. It is only one state, but it would be a significant shift given how blue Virginia has been to have a Republican governor. And so I think whether or not it might have an effect on some congressmen or senators who are out there looking and thinking, is there a wave coming? Is the midterm election, and would it lead, for example, to slowing down the push for this large spending package? I don't think so, really. I think the Democrats are really quite committed to wanting to move ahead. So I think it'll have an impact, certainly in the media discussion. And it certainly will not help the discussion about Joe Biden's popularity. But again, I think he needs a win, and I think he needs some success, and that may push the Democrats to finally pass something.
And we have 2 minutes left. And it seems like Joe Biden is walking this line where he doesn't want to kind of go nuclear, right? And just pass certain things like voting rights and with just a straight party line vote. He doesn't want to do that. There's pressure for him to do that. If he starts looking bad in the polls and he loses this in Virginia, do you think he becomes more aggressive in some of the things he tries to pass in Congress?
Well, that could backfire because, I mean, the voting law, the problem there is that he would need to get rid of the filibuster. And the filibuster in the Senate still has the support of Manchin and Sinema and even some other Democrats who've at least expressed some reservations about getting rid of the filibuster. So there would be some techniques he'd have to use that would be challenging, to say the least. I don't know whether he'll turn further, get more aggressive. There is a way in which he has moved to the left after being elected in order to pass this bill, that he feels much more in debt to the Progressive Caucus and to the left of the Democratic Party and the Bernie Sanders wing. But he could also point to a Republican victory in Virginia and say, look, we got to adjust. We have to remember we can't lose the middle. And he might pull back from some of this and maybe accept simply the infrastructure bill and not try and push for more radical change.
Fascinating. Well, thank you so much for being with us. Political science professor, Vanderbilt University, Dr. Thomas Schwartz. Thank you for being with us once again.
Thank you very much.
You bet. All right, we will take a break. I'll come back, wrap everything up. We'll be back right after this.